I'm Heather from Hia Booktubes, and today is my July reading wrap-up. In the month of July, I read 23 books. I DNF'd 2 of them, and so I'm going to talk about 21 of them here. Several of those are the short stories from the Hidden Legacy series, so it's not really as impressive as it sounds, but that's what I'm going to talk about. As always, I'm going in chronological order, and all of the books are listed and linked in the description. If they're available on Kindle Unlimited, they are marked in the description. And yeah, same old, same old. The first book that I read was 2 Minute Warning, which is Houston Skyhawks #2 by Alexandra Warren. I gave this 5 stars. This is absolutely my top 3, probably my number 1, but in my top 3 of the books that I read this month. I loved this so much. So this is an NFL football player romance, and she is an influencer, and her father is a gambler on sports, and so because of that, the NFL player, he's actually the quarterback for the Houston Skyhawks, is kind of leery of getting involved because it can be detrimental to his career to be accused of like throwing games or anything like that for the gambling, right? So that is a legitimate concern, but this is definitely insta-love. It's low conflict. There's no third act breakup. They do talk things out anytime an issue arises. They treat each other really well. It's black love, and I really liked especially like how girly and how she, you know, really leaned into the Instagrammer influencer space, and I thought that was pretty cool. Also, if you are a football fan, Alexandra Warren knows her stuff. There's a lot of football in this book, and so if you want a realistic or accurate depiction of a NFL football player's life and relationship in the games themselves, you'll definitely get that here, even though it is focused on the romance. You do have content warnings for gambling addiction, pill addiction, and death of a parent. Then I read The Dawn, which is the family #5 by Katrina Jackson. I gave this 4 stars. This is the conclusion to the prequel novella that introduces us to the series with The Dawn, and the first of the female relatives who goes to Italy. There's cheating in that prequel novella, and she gets accidentally pregnant and then goes back to America without any way to contact him or anything like that. Then we have books 2 and 3, which follow our other relatives, and now finally we are back with the couple that started it all. She's still pregnant, so that kind of gives you a timeline for how much time has passed in the meantime, and he's trying to get out of the mafia and be able to live with the woman that he loves. So this is really her just being taken care of. And I will say books 2 and 3 are hands down my favorite of the series by far. Those are the ones that I'm like, if you really want the good stuff, that's what you read. But that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it or that I didn't feel like she did a good job with it. I just 2 and 3 are my favorite. Then I read A Reckless Match, which is Ruthless Rivals #1 by Kate Bateman. I gave this 5 stars. This is a historical romance, which I'm sure you can tell by the cover. This was recommended to me by Aaron at Aaron's Reading Room. We were in a live show, I think maybe for World Hoppers, I don't remember. And he mentioned it, and it just sounded so good. So you have these 2 rival families, and you know, the king was like, no, stop fighting. And so he did a no man's land between their 2 territories, and if you don't show up on the certain day of the year to shake hands, the other family, the one that did show up, gets the lands by forfeit. So they always do, and he's been in the military and she's all grown up, and they're the ones that meet, and they're smugglers, and it's definitely, I've always had a thing for you, and we've been rivals our whole life, but now we're adults, and yeah, maybe we're still kind of bickering, but it's very much banter bickering, and I really liked their dynamic. I had a really fun time with it. Then I read 4 Aunties and a Wedding by Jessica Sutanto. This is book #2 in the Aunties, I think, and I gave this 2 stars. I loved book 1 last year. It was one of my favorite books of the year. It's a familial drama with a murder, try and get away with murder plot, so you're not trying to figure out, and it's just over the top shenanigans that I found really comical. I laughed out loud so many times, and you know, kind of a little bit of a side romance that I also enjoyed. This one tried to do what everything that I loved in the first one. I really failed. So I don't really want to comment on the cultural family dynamics because I feel like I don't have the experience to, you know, be nitpicky about it, if you will. However, I didn't love that. And I really felt like some of her embarrassment and struggle with her family was not age appropriate. It kind of felt like a teenager being embarrassed of their family, and you're like a 28-year-old adult. And I don't know. I know how much I was embarrassed by my family with different things as a teenager, as a kid. I'm 31. I am grown. Those things are not going to bother me. And if you decide to poke fun at them, I'm either going to laugh with you because it's not that big of a deal, or I'm going to take you down because how dare you? I just felt like it wasn't really, I think that just sums it up. I felt like, one, we were dealing with the exact same types of conflicts that we did in the first one rather than making progress. You know, supposedly she accepted everything about her family in the first one, and now we're just right back at it, and even worse than we were. And then also the shenanigans and the conflict and all of it, I just felt was really dumb. And I kept just being like, why are you doing this? What is the point? And there were so many things that I was just like, literally 1 second of communication and we don't have to have a book. You know, that type of thing. And it was just, I didn't like it. I didn't like anything about it. I really was sad because I was looking forward to it so much, and I was ready to just have a great time, and I didn't. Additionally, their wedding was pretty much ruined, and I thought that was really sad. Her mother-in-law treated them horribly, and I didn't like that. I didn't feel like there was a good reason for that. Yeah. It just kind of felt like a not as good redo of the first book. Then I read Inextricably Tied, which is Last Touch Duet #2 by Aveda. I gave this 5 stars. This is Harper, who is, no, darn it. It's not Harper. Oh my god. It's Harbinger, who is a banshee, and Flint, who is a gargoyle, and they add a third into their relationship, which is Agony, which is a night terror that was taken out of a serial killer, and the serial killer has been caught, but they are trying to find the girls, or the remains of the girls. And so that's kind of the entire plot with that. A lot of it is dealing with your own grief and your own trauma and learning to trust your partner enough to open yourself up to them. I would say that's primarily what the book is about, but it does also tie into all of their other things with benefits, couples, and I did really enjoy it. I thought it was good. Then I read Sapphire Flames, which is Hidden Legacy #4 by Ilona Andrews. I gave this 5 stars. This is the first book with Katrina and Alexandra. After we followed Nevada and Rogan for the first trilogy, we had the bridge novella where we watched Katrina's POV of the preparations and the actual wedding of Nevada and Rogan, and now we're firmly in Katrina's POV. And because of different reasons, she is now the head of her family house, which is the magical house that they do. So, you know, alliances and stuff, and it's 3 years after the first trilogy, which made a lot of sense, one, for her age, and also for the way that the political and power things are done in the world. It made sense for us to have this 3-year time jump. And yeah, I loved it. We obviously had the live show for it. It was great. It was great. If you like urban fantasy romance, you should read this series. Then I read A Misunderstanding, which is Hidden Legacy 4.1 by Ilona Andrews. I gave this 4 stars. This is Arabella, who is the youngest sister. It's Arabella's POV of a disaster decision that her cousin had made that we saw playing out in the 4th book. Then I read Emerald Blaze, which is Hidden Legacy #5 by Ilona Andrews. I gave this 5 stars. This is the next full-length book. We do get Alexandra and Katrina firmly as a couple at the end of this book, and I personally thought that the magical opponent that they were facing was a very unique blend of a lot of different things that we see often, but that I'd never read it quite like this before, and I thought it was extremely clever. And as always with Ilona Andrews' books, the side characters shine. You get such an amazing found family in every single one of their books. If that's something that you really enjoy, it is present in all of their works and it is done so incredibly well. Then I read Pay Me, which is Hidden Legacy 4.2. I gave this 5 stars. This is Catalina and Arabella getting a payment. It's Catalina's POV, and I thought it was an interesting look into the political dynamics between their house and other houses. Again, very short. And then I read The Cool Ant, which is Hidden Legacy 5.1 by Ilona Andrews. I gave this 5 stars. This is the one that I would recommend that you read if you don't read any of the other ones. Read this one after book 5 because you do get a reveal in it, and it's Arabella's POV of the ending of Emerald Blaze. And yeah, I definitely recommend reading it. You get some new information. Then I read Bite Maker, which is volume 1 of the Bite Maker, I think, manga. And I gave this 3 stars. There's some non-consensual stuff. This is Omegaverse. It's the King's Omega. She's been suppressing the fact that she's an Omega and trying to pass as a Beta, which is very common in Omegaverse. And I am not sure if we are getting multiple love interests in this or just one. I really am unsure of what direction it's going. I still have to read the other volumes. I will hopefully be doing that in August. Then I finally finished Zachary Yin and the Dragon Emperor, which is Zachary Yin #1 by Jiren J. Zhao. I would have given this 3 stars. This is a middle grade book. It's like Percy Jackson meets Yu-Gi-Oh! And it is a Chinese American boy who is 12 years old, right? So I would have given this 3 stars, but my 9-year-old boy said that this was the best book he's ever had read out loud to him, and he absolutely loved it. So I gave it a 5-star rating for that reason, because he's the target audience. He's the reason why I read the book, and he absolutely loved it. So a few things I really liked about this book is our main character is gay. He is Muslim. He's a Chinese minority, and right off the bat, as soon as you get into the book, you're dealing with some American racism, but the whole book is not dealing with the trauma of racism. It deals a lot with the Chinese diaspora and the Chinese oppression of Muslims, as well as many Chinese historical figures who are present in the book, because the first emperor of China, the Dragon Emperor, is supposed to possess Zach because Zach is one of his descendants, but things go wrong and he actually possesses Zach's VR headset, which is an entire game, which is kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh! In the world. My kids immediately wished that the game was real and wanted it. It's very interesting because he's kind of struggling throughout the whole book with who is the bad guy here, who should I trust? Is doing the wrong thing for the right reason okay, or doing the right thing for the wrong reason? Like, if I'm doing the right thing for me and my family, but I'm doing it for bad people, is that okay? Like, there was a lot of things like that, and there was a lot of great Chinese mythology and historical figures in this, and it was just a great time. If you want a magical adventure, this is great. Then I read Surrender to the Moonlight, which is Georgia Arcane #1 by Drea Anderson. I gave this 3 stars. This is Black Love. Our main character is bi, and she has a puma that she's been cursed with. Her whole family has been cursed with. It's like a shifter, but they can't control it. They turn at the full moon only. They have no recollection of their time as a cat. And they also have some pretty powerful magic, but she specifically hasn't been around her family, hasn't grown up around her family, and doesn't really know how to control it very well or how to use it very well. And she has a romance with the alpha of the werewolf pack that is local there, and her grandmother was murdered and they're trying to figure out who killed her. There's some family drama, and there's also some angst because part of the curse is that anyone that they love either dies or leaves them, and so obviously she's worried about growing feelings for this alpha. To be perfectly honest, the plots didn't entirely work for me, and I found the whole book kind of meh. And I feel like a lot of that was my own issues and just my own experience, and not necessarily a problem with the book, but that was my experience. Then I read Our Teachers Are Dating, Volume 3. I gave this 5 stars. This is a sapphic manga. It's very slice of life, very happy, very sweet. There's definitely some steam in there, but you're not following any sort of plot. You're just following a little bit of the progression of their relationship. And in this one, they did move in together, so made progress. Then I read Sweat and Soap Volume 4, which I gave 5 stars. This is a manga where she sweats a lot and he loves the way that she smells, and they both work for the soap company, but he is the one that makes the soaps and she's like his inspiration and his muse. They also moved in together in this volume, and this is very sweet, but also they just are so nervous about just the smallest things that can get a little old, I guess, but I am still really enjoying it. Then I read Purity by Skylar Mason. I gave this 3 stars. This is a contemporary romance that's friends to lovers, specifically because of purity culture, and the main character had talked about how, 1, she was waiting for marriage, and 2, how she could never be with somebody who wasn't a Christian and things like that. So they've been best friends for forever, and she's really trying to grow into her backbone, and you know, she still believes in Jesus, but she no longer believes in purity culture, and she's bound and determined that she's going to start this next year of college no longer a virgin, and she asked him to help out with that. Okay, so I can see what she was going for here, but it didn't entirely land for me. There's supposed to be primal kink in here, and when I say it was the most minimal amount, it was not primal kink. It was literally chased one time through the house for a second. It was not. Calling it primal kink is a little bit of a stretch in my opinion. Yeah, it was alright. If you're interested in someone coming out of purity culture, you might enjoy it. This big theme throughout the book. Then I read Taking the Leap, which is River Rain number 3 by Kristen Ashley. I gave this 5 stars. This is, Rix is a firefighter. He lost his feet during a fire. A tree landed on him and he's a double amputee. And Alex is from a very rich family. They are co-workers. They work for a environmental charity that works with youth. So they've worked together for a long time, and he thinks that she has a problem with him because of his disability, because of using his wheelchair and things like that. And she doesn't at all. She has a huge crush on him and is just so socially awkward. She can't function around guys that she, you know, has a thing for, and that's him. And he thinks it's all about his disability, and that's not it at all. They finally, at the beginning of this book, find out what each other think, and she is so offended that he would think that she was the type of person who couldn't be a decent human being around someone with a visible disability. So that was an interesting dynamic. Also, his fiance did leave him after his accident, so be aware of that. She was quiet and shy, but not a doormat. I do recommend reading this series in order. This one, you definitely don't have to have read it in order because it is about further side characters. So the plot of the first 2 books isn't as integral to your understanding of this book, but I do recommend reading it in order. It was great. It was not nearly as angsty or as mean as I thought it might be. Oh, there's also fake dating in here for her sister's wedding. Then I read Soft and Low by Jamie Bennett. I gave this 3 stars. So this was recommended to me by a commenter, and it was recommended as the type of book like Kate C. Wells, and I can definitely see that connection. The problem for me, I have a few problems, but the problem for me was that there was so much abuse in this book. So our main character is deaf in one ear and has a hearing aid, and has been made fun of and mocked, and her family treats her, specifically her dad, treats her like she's stupid, and other people treat her like she's stupid. But her dad is so abusive, so much domestic abuse in here, like a lot of domestic abuse, and it was too much for me. It was too much for me. On top of that, if you're going to have such a difficult thing inside of a book, I feel like you need to have a lot of other goodness in the book, and that just didn't happen. Her best friend was a literal piece of trash. I do not understand anything with that relationship. I hated her so much. I hated how our main character just was constantly like, oh, you can't be so mean to me. Oh, you know, it's okay. I'm sure you didn't mean to. It was like, she's literal trash. She's the most selfish character I've read in a minute. There was not a single redeeming quality in this person. I hated her. And at the end of the book, it's just like, oh, we no longer have an addiction and we're married to a cop and we're on the straight and narrow. And I was like, what? What? No. You're a terrible person and I hope you die. But part of it is she was not a good person who had an addiction. Yes, her addiction, I felt like, made her more erratic, but as the character was written, she was just a bad friend. She was a bad person. She was not a good person. And then also, like, her future mother-in-law doesn't really like her. Her brother, who she loves and adores, doesn't treat her super well. He treats her pretty well, and he is young. He's like 17. But there were still things that he did that weren't okay. Her sister, who left, didn't treat her okay. Her mother didn't try to protect her from abuse at all. The only person who was good to her in this entire book was the love interest, and he was really good to her, but at the same time, between the toxic characters and all of these other characters who were good to her still had scenes where they were not, and I just felt like that was very unnecessary. And like I said, the domestic abuse was too much. It was too much, and the absolute lack of freedom, the lack of any resources or any way to change her life, and she didn't want to leave because she didn't want to leave her brother to the abuse, and it was just a mess. And I didn't feel like there was anything to redeem it. I didn't feel like there was anything in here to make it a book that I wanted to read. Like, honestly, it was just very heavy and toxic, and that was kind of it. Yes, the love interest was very sweet, but he didn't outweigh everything else. I will say it was good writing. Then I read Trucker by Jamie Schlosser, which I gave 3 stars. This is a young truck driver and then a young runaway from foster care. She's 17, almost 18. She is 18 once they actually sleep together, but like she moves in with him and they fool around before she turns 18. He's like 21. They're both virgins. It was sweet. The entire plot of this book was the main character making stupid decisions, and I stand by that assessment. So were they sweet to each other? Yeah, but the entire plot was idiotic. So take that for what you will. Then the Red Magpie The Mayhem, which is the Badlands #2 by Elsie Winters. I gave this 5 stars. I love Elsie Winters. So this is the magpie shifter that is the best friend of the previous book's main character, and the vampire who is a roommate of the previous book's love interest. And they actually knew each other as children before he became a vampire. He's of Asian descent. His parents completely cut him off when he becomes a vampire, and he's very mistrusting. He doesn't really want anybody from his old life to know him, and she's just very prickly and also in your face, and she's one of those characters who is not going to allow miscommunication because she's going to be like, what is your problem? And I loved them both. He was so sweet, and also while still being so sweet, she really liked being pinned down, and because he was a vampire, he was like so strong, and those scenes did it for me. I was like, oh, all right, yes, you're a little bit of a cinnamon roll, but I see what you're doing. And they also rescue a baby dragon, and there's lots of baby dragon things as part of their forced proximity is trying to take care of this baby dragon because he has fire powers and he is fireproof, and the baby dragon is spitting fire everywhere. And so she needs help from someone who won't get burned. I just absolutely loved their romance. I loved it. I loved it. It was so sweet. I highly recommend reading the series in order. I think that it makes a lot more sense and you get a lot more of the world if you read it in order, even though each book is about a standalone couple. Read them in order. They're so good. They're so good. And I can't wait for the next one. The next one, we get the Grim Reaper. That is the other roommate. And I am so excited because he's one of my favorite characters. And lastly, I read The Woman with the Scar, which is close to family, number 3 by Jessica Gaziella. I gave this 4 stars. This is a woman who's been forced into being not a mafia wife, but they're more like a low-level money extortioner, mafia wannabes. And she has been enduring domestic abuse for like 1.5 years, which is the length of her marriage. Her husband's much older than she is. You don't get any abuse on page, but it is obviously a theme throughout the book. You do see that he's going to hit her and something stops him. So no abuse on page, but definitely those themes throughout the book. And enforcer for the Costa family mafia is supposed to be spying on her husband, and once he sees her, that's all he's interested in. So he kills her husband and gives him to her basically, and it's very insta-love. They have immediate things going on, but the brothers of the husband are trying to cheat her out of all of her money, and her family isn't necessarily safe, and all of this. So he's the guy who loves to inflict pain and kill people, but also is not an abuser. So that's my jam. Like, I don't care if you're killing bad guys, as long as you're good to your family, we are cool. And yeah, it was really sweet despite those heavy topics that were talked about and that they were living through. So that's it. That's all the books that I read in July. Let me know if you've read or want to read any of these, or if there was a particular book that you loved in July. I would love to hear about it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.